The first time my wife tried to erase me, she did it with a smile and a microphone. The ballroom lights were too bright, the kind that flatten faces and bleach shadows, but somehow they still found her. They hit her cleanly, deliberately, like a spotlight had been programmed to follow her wherever she moved. She stood on the small, temporary stage in a white blazer so crisp and expensive it didn't just signal success, it announced it. The kind of jacket that never wrinkled, never apologized, never belonged to someone who waited their turn. Behind her, stretched across the wall in glossy vinyl, the banner gleamed, Hartley Wellness Regen Medical, grand opening. The letters were oversized, confident, impossible to miss. Her name sat beneath the logo in gold, reflective enough to catch the light every time she shifted her weight. Dr. Avery Hartley. Not shared, not hyphenated, not softened, just hers, set there like it had always been waiting. And in the front row, right beside the mayor and a couple of local reporters, she looked straight at me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Not through me. At me. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a glance searching for reassurance. It was precise, a check-in, a silent reminder of where I was supposed to be and where I wasn't. Before we cut the ribbon, she said, voice smooth and practiced, warm in that professional way that never quite reaches the eyes, I want to thank the people who helped get this dream across the finish line. Applause rose immediately, neat and enthusiastic, the kind of applause people give when they want to be seen giving it. Hands came together in sync, smiles appeared on cue. A few heads nodded like they were affirming something bigger than they fully understood. I stood by the bar because she told me to. Stay near the back, she'd said in the car, adjusting her lipstick in the visor mirror. You'll make it awkward if you hover. So I didn't hover. I stayed exactly where I was placed, half shadowed by a tall cocktail table and a row of standing guests who never quite turned all the way toward me. Close enough to see everything, far enough to be irrelevant. I wore the suit she liked, the one she picked out after rejecting 3 others, the one she said made me look safe, respectable, neutral, like a man who blended into the background of photographs, like a man nobody would suspect of having a spine. She started naming donors and community partners, ticking them off with confident rhythm. A bank executive, a supplier, her medical director. Each name delivered with a smile calibrated just slightly differently, each pause timed for applause. A real estate broker stood when she mentioned him, waving briefly to the crowd. He leaned toward her afterward, too close, his shoulder angling in her direction like he expected her to angle back. She didn't. But she didn't move away either. And from where I stood, glass in hand, suit pressed, back straight, I understood something quietly, all at once. This wasn't a celebration. It was a presentation. And I wasn't on the slide deck. Then she paused. The pause was deliberate. The kind of pause that tells a room, this is the part you're going to remember. And of course, she said, I also want to acknowledge someone who supported me in the early phase, when this was just a trial run. A few people laughed politely, not sure if they were allowed to. Avery tilted her head. My test-run husband. The laugh this time came louder, sharper, like the room had been waiting for permission to enjoy it. My stomach did something cold and slow. I took one step forward without thinking. The floor felt too solid, like it was daring me to react, like it wanted a scene. Avery kept smiling. She lifted her hand, and 2 women in matching black dresses walked up with a small white envelope. For the sake of transparency, Avery continued, and because this clinic represents a new chapter of independence for me, she let that word land. Independence. I'm making a clean break tonight. She reached into the envelope and pulled out a packet of paper. Divorce papers. You could hear it, the collective little inhale of a crowd that didn't want to be involved but wanted the story later. Avery looked at the nearest camera. "It's nothing dramatic," she said, like she wasn't cutting me open in public. "It's just reality." Then she turned and extended the papers toward me like she was handing back a borrowed pen. "Sign when you're ready," she said. I walked up the aisle slowly. I could feel every eye moving with me. Phones came up. The mayor's wife whispered something into her husband's ear. Someone laughed again, quick and nervous, as if a laugh could make this feel less cruel. I reached the stage. The steps were short, but my legs felt heavy. Avery leaned toward me like she might kiss my cheek for the cameras. Instead, she spoke low, only for me. "Don't make this a thing," she murmured, teeth still showing in that perfect smile. "You're not built for public conflict." I looked at the papers. Then I looked at her, and I understood something so clearly it almost calmed me. She thought the story was already written, that I was the warm-up act, the guy from the early seasons nobody remembers. Avery held out a pen. The pen had our clinic logo on it. Our. Funny word. The room waited. I took the pen, not to sign, just to feel how light it was. I leaned in the same way she did, close enough that my voice wouldn't carry. "I'm not signing anything tonight," I said. Her smile didn't change. "Then don't. It's filed. This is just courtesy." I nodded slowly like I accepted that. Then I said the one sentence I knew would turn her knees to water. "Then I'm pulling my investment tonight." A flicker, just a flicker, crossed her eyes. She recovered fast. "That's not how it works," she whispered, still smiling. "It is," I said, "because I never invested in you. I invested in the entity. And the entity is about to find out what it's made of without my money holding it up." Avery's smile tightened. Then she lifted her chin and turned back to the crowd like I was a man standing beside her, not a man she'd tried to bury. "Isn't love funny?" she said into the microphone, laugh light and breezy. "Anyway, let's celebrate the clinic." Applause kicked up again, uncertain at first, then louder. People love momentum. They love anything that lets them pretend they didn't just watch a marriage get shoved down a flight of stairs. Avery raised the scissors. The ribbon snapped, cameras flashed, and my phone began to vibrate in my pocket like it had a heartbeat of its own. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't do the dramatic thing she expected. I walked off the stage. I went straight out the side door into the cold night air. The parking lot smelled like new asphalt and exhaust, and the kind of hope people buy with loans. I stood under a flickering light pole and called my attorney. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been awake waiting for a reason. "Gina Larkin," she said. "Talk to me." "I need an emergency call," I said. "Tonight. Now. What happened?" "My wife served me divorce papers at her clinic opening in front of everyone." Silence. Then, "That's bold." She also called me her test-run husband on a microphone. "Oh," Gina said. "So she's performing." "Yes, and I'm done being a prop." "Okay," Gina said, voice shifting into that calm, sharp place lawyers go when things become real. "What do you want?" "I want my money out." "How much are we talking?" 4.3 million. A beat. "Is it documented?" Gina asked. "Yes." "In what form? Equity, loan, convertible note?" "Bridge loan with a conversion clause and a personal guarantee from her holding company," I said. "We structured it clean." Gina exhaled. "You did your homework." "I didn't trust the timeline," I said. "I trusted the pattern." "Good," she said. "Then we have leverage. But pulling it isn't like calling the bank and saying, 'Never mind.' It's about triggering terms." "I want every term triggered." "Then I need the agreements tonight," she said. "Email them. And don't discuss this with her." I almost laughed. She discussed it with a ballroom. Gina didn't laugh back. "Listen to me. You're going to feel tempted to correct the story publicly. Don't. We handle this like adults who know receipts matter." "I'm calm," I said. I wasn't calm. I was quiet. There's a difference. Where are you? She asked. Parking lot. Go home, Gina said. Lock your door. Send me everything. And whatever you do, do not threaten her. Do not touch her accounts. Do not do anything stupid. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were, she replied. I said don't do anything that makes her able to paint you as unstable. I watched through the glass doors as people swarmed Avery inside, congratulating her like she'd just cured something. I said, I'm going home. Then I ended the call and sat in my car for a minute, hands on the steering wheel. My phone lit up again. Avery. Then Avery again. Then a number I didn't recognize. Then her clinic manager. Then her cousin. Then her mother. Like the room had spun a wheel and decided every person in her orbit had a right to reach into my pocket and pull out my spine. I didn't answer. I drove home through streets that looked normal enough to insult me. Couples walking dogs, a guy jogging with a headlamp. Christmas lights still half up on a few houses like people hadn't decided what season they were in. When I got home, I walked into a house that already felt like it had been staged. Avery had been redecorating lately, meaning removing everything that looked like me. My framed photo with my dad, my signed baseball, the old kitchen clock my grandmother gave us. Clutter, she'd said. No, evidence. I walked into my office and opened the safe behind the filing cabinet. I scanned everything into a folder labeled Hartley Funding. Then I sent it to Gina, and I waited. My phone kept buzzing. 17 missed calls, 29, 41. I made coffee I didn't drink. I sat on the couch and watched the front door like it might change shape. At 67 missed calls, someone knocked. Not a friendly tap-tap, a firm knock, controlled, official. I didn't move right away. I stared at the door like it might speak first. The knock came again. Then a voice through the wood, low and clear. Mr. Mason Hartley? I blinked. Nobody called me that anymore. Avery made sure of it. She used my first name in public and my last name like it tasted bad. I stood, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. A man in a dark jacket. Not a cop uniform, not a delivery guy, just a man with the posture of someone who never asks twice. I opened the door halfway, chain still latched. Yes? He held up a badge. Private security, maybe. Then he held up a sealed envelope. My name is Trent Kessler, he said. I'm here on behalf of Latham Bridge Bank. My stomach tightened. About what? I asked. He tilted his head slightly, like he wasn't sure if I was playing dumb. About the $4.3 million that just changed direction, he said, and the clinic that no longer has it. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. Kessler didn't step in. He didn't even glance past me. He wasn't there for my house. He was there for my signature. I didn't transfer anything, I said carefully. He nodded like he believed I believed that. You didn't have to. The draw schedule was set. The final wire was staged to release Monday morning. It's now flagged. Flagged by who? By your counsel, he said. That hit me like a quiet compliment. Gina moved fast. Kessler handed me the envelope. This is notice, he said. Your instrument triggers a review. There's a timeline. I didn't open it yet. Why send you? Because the clinic's team is panicking, he said. And banks don't like panicking. I almost smiled. Neither do I. Kessler's expression didn't change. Dr. Hartley called the bank's relationship office. She said there was a misunderstanding. She said you were emotional. A familiar anger rose. Hot. Simple. She served divorce papers on a stage, I said. I'm not emotional. I'm responsive. Kessler's gaze held mine. May I ask something? Sure. Did she expect you to keep funding her after that? He asked. The truth came out before I could polish it. Yes. Kessler nodded once, like he'd just confirmed a theory. Then she doesn't understand leverage. He turned slightly, as if the conversation was over. Then he stopped. One more thing, he said. There's been some movement tonight. Movement? He lowered his voice. She's trying to move clinic assets into a new entity. It's sloppy, it's fast, and it won't look good. A thrill ran through me. Not joy, not revenge. More like the moment you realize the person who shoved you is already slipping on the ice. What happens now? I asked. Kessler looked at my house, then back at me. Now she's going to come here, he said. Not because she misses you, because she needs you. As if on cue, my phone lit again. Avery. I didn't answer. Kessler stepped back. If you want my advice, he said, keep doing what you're doing. Quiet, documented, professional. Why are you telling me that? I asked. He paused. Because I've seen people like her, he said, and because banks hate theater. Then he walked off my porch and into the night. I closed the door and stared at the envelope. I opened it. Inside was a formal notice, suspension of disbursement, pending review of conditions, acknowledgement of triggered clauses, and a reminder that any attempt to alter collateral structures would be investigated. In plain English, her clinic just lost its oxygen tank. My phone buzzed again, this time a text. From Avery, pick up, this is serious. Then another, you can't do this. You're going to ruin everything. Then, please. I stared at that last word. Please. I thought of her smile on that stage. I thought of the way she held those papers like a prize. I typed back one sentence. You made it public. So we're doing it properly. Through counsel. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Then my phone rang. Not Avery this time, a number I didn't know. I answered because I didn't want surprises stacking up. Hello? A man's voice, strained. Mr. Hartley, this is Owen Pike, Operations Director at Hartley Wellness. I almost laughed at the irony of him using the clinic name like it belonged to Avery alone. Yes, I said. What do you want? We have a problem, he said quickly. The vendors are calling. The equipment lease company is threatening to pause delivery. Our payroll vendor is asking about the funding confirmation. Talk to Dr. Hartley, I said. I tried, Owen said. She's not in a place to handle this right now. I pictured her in that ballroom, still smiling for photos, while her world started quietly collapsing. That's unfortunate, I said. Owen's voice cracked, just slightly. We have staff who left stable jobs for this clinic. They trusted the launch. They trusted the funding. I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt, responsibility. Avery used people like furniture. She rearranged them for aesthetics. I didn't recruit them, I said. She did. But you funded it, Owen insisted. I funded a medical business with terms, I said. Not a performance. There was a pause. Then Owen said, She's coming to your house. I stared at the door. How do you know? Because she just left, he said. And she's not calm. Another buzz. Another text from Avery. Open the door when I get there. We need to talk like adults. Like adults. Like she hadn't tried to humiliate me into silence an hour earlier. I said to Owen, if she's not calm, tell her not to come. I tried, he said. She didn't listen. I hung up. Then I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and took out the small black notebook I used for things I didn't want floating around digitally. On the first page, I wrote, Rule number 1, no private conversations without a witness. Then I wrote, Rule number 2, document everything. Then I wrote the last one, the one that mattered most. Rule number 3, don't save someone who would drown you to stay dry. I put the notebook down. And I waited for the next knock. The knock came 10 minutes later. Harder. Faster. Then Avery's voice, sharp through the door. Mason, open up. I didn't move. Mason, she snapped. This isn't funny. Funny. I walked to the door and opened it. No chain this time, because I wanted her to see I wasn't afraid of her. Not anymore. Avery stood on the porch in that same white blazer, but now it looked like a costume she couldn't breathe in. Her hair was still perfect, but her eyes were wrong. She stepped inside without asking, like the house was still hers. She smelled like champagne and expensive perfume and adrenaline. "What did you do?" she demanded. I closed the door behind her calmly. "I protected myself." Avery spun toward me. "You can't just yank funding like that. You're going to destroy the clinic." "You served me papers on a stage," I said. "You destroyed the marriage." "That was business," she snapped. I stared at her. "You used our marriage as a punchline and called it business." Avery's jaw tightened. "Don't be dramatic." "Don't be stupid," I said, and watched her flinch because she wasn't used to hearing that tone from me. "You didn't just insult me. You tried to lock me into silence in front of donors, reporters, city officials." "I didn't lock you into anything," she said quickly. "You're making this bigger than it is." "You made it public," I said. "So now it's public." Avery's hands shook once. She hid it by grabbing the back of a chair. "I need you to undo it," she said, voice dropping, softer, strategic. "Now." I shook my head. "Through counsel." Her eyes flashed. "I don't have time for your little legal games." "This isn't a game," I said. "It's terms, it's contracts, it's risk." Avery leaned closer, lowering her voice. "If this clinic fails, it doesn't just hurt me. It hurts staff, patients, community." "You didn't care about community when you humiliated me," I said. "That was personal," she hissed. "This is bigger." I exhaled slowly. "You're not bigger than consequences." Avery stared like she wanted to slap me, but knew she couldn't. Not if she wanted me to do what she needed. Then she tried another angle. Her face softened into something almost believable. "I made a mistake," she said. "I was excited. I got caught up. People were watching. I wanted to look strong. And I was the sacrifice," I said. Avery swallowed. "I didn't mean it like that." "You meant it," I said. "You just didn't mean I would stand up." Silence sat between us. Heavy. Honest. Then Avery's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her face drained. "Who is it?" I asked. She didn't answer. She hit decline. Then it buzzed again. Same caller. She hit decline again, harder. And that's when I noticed something. She wasn't just afraid of losing money. She was afraid of someone else. "Avery," I said quietly, "who are you scared of right now?" Her eyes snapped to mine. "Nobody." I nodded once, like I accepted her lie. Then I said, "Okay, then tell me why you have 67 missed calls on my phone and you're standing in my house like you need shelter." Avery's mouth opened, closed. She looked toward my office, like she expected my safe to be sitting out on the table. Then she said the truth in the smallest voice I'd heard from her in years. "Because I can't have this audit," she whispered. I didn't move. "What audit?" Avery's eyes shone with anger and panic. "The bank review, the compliance review, the collateral review. If they dig..." "If they dig what?" I asked. Avery's shoulders lifted like she was trying to hold herself together physically. Then she said it. "Because there are things in the clinic's financials that aren't clean." My heart didn't race. It slowed. Because now I understood the real reason she served me papers on a stage. Not confidence, containment. She wasn't cutting me loose because she didn't need me. She was cutting me loose because she didn't want me close enough to see the mess. I stared at her and said, "What did you do, Avery?" Avery's eyes hardened. "Don't act like you're innocent," she snapped. "You knew this was complicated." "I knew it was expensive," I said. "I didn't know it was dirty." "Don't use that word," she said, voice sharp again. "You don't understand how clinics work. The delays, the approvals, the vendors. Sometimes you have to..." "Sometimes you have to what?" I asked. Avery looked away. Then her phone buzzed again. This time she answered, voice tight. "What?" A man's voice spilled through the speaker, loud enough for me to hear pieces. "Avery, where are you? The suppliers are pulling out. The bank is flagging everything. The mayor's office is asking questions. You need to fix this." Avery's eyes cut to me like a warning. Then she forced her voice sweet. I'm handling it. The man's voice rose. No, you're not. You promised me the clinic would be liquid by Monday. You promised the money was locked. Avery snapped. Not now. She ended the call. I stared at her. Who was that? Avery's lips tightened. A partner. What partner? A stakeholder, she corrected. That word, stakeholder, was her favorite disguise. It made anything sound legitimate. I took a slow breath and said, if you want me to even consider anything, you're going to tell me everything. Avery laughed once, sharp. You don't have that kind of power. I stepped closer until we were an arm's length apart. I have the money, I said quietly. And I have the contracts. So yes, Avery, I do. Her eyes flashed with hatred. Then, because she had no other move, she nodded. Fine, she said. But you're going to regret it. I didn't blink. Start talking, I said. And Avery Hartley, Dr. Avery, the woman who could charm a room into applause, began to explain the first crack in the foundation. Not the whole truth, not yet, but enough that I felt the floor shift under both of us. Avery didn't sit. She paced my living room like it was a courtroom and she was rehearsing. Say it, I told her, plain. Her eyes darted to the windows, like she expected someone to be out there listening. You don't know how clinics get built, she said. Not really. I know contracts, I said, and I know numbers. Start there. She stopped pacing long enough to pull her phone up, thumb shaking as she scrolled. We were behind, she said. Permits, inspections, equipment shipping delays, everything stacked. If we didn't open tonight, donors would pull. The landlord would call default. The whole thing would collapse. You opened, I said. Congrats. Now tell me what's not clean. Avery swallowed. The vendor quotes changed. Changed how? Higher, she said quickly. Because of expedited fees. Storage. Priority handling. I held her stare. That's not illegal. That's just ugly. Avery's jaw tightened at the word. It's not just that. She finally sat, but only on the edge of the chair like sitting too fully would mean surrender. There's a group, she said. They finance medical bills. They connect vendors. They smooth things. My skin went cold. Avery, she snapped. It's not what you think. I'm not thinking. I'm listening. Who are they? Avery hesitated. Then, a guy named Dylan Rusk. The name landed wrong. Like a door opening to a hallway, I didn't want to walk down. What does Dylan Rusk do? I asked. He's not a doctor, she said. He's logistics, funding, introductions. I waited. Silence is pressure if you let it be. Avery exhaled hard. He fronted the equipment timing. He told me he could guarantee delivery dates. By doing what? By paying, she said, voice tight. By moving money where it needed to go. I leaned forward. From where? Avery's eyes flicked to me like she hated the answer. From our build budget, she said. My money, I corrected. Our funding, she snapped. Then her voice dropped. And some of it wasn't documented the way it should have been. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. So you paid off book fees. Avery looked away. Call them what you want. I felt a slow, controlled anger start to climb up my ribs. Not wild rage, the kind that makes you careful. Why would a doctor do that? I asked. Why would you risk your license? Avery's eyes flashed. Because failure isn't allowed. Not for me. There it was. That familiar hunger. Not for healing people. For winning. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Gina. I answered without looking away from Avery. I'm here. Gina's voice was low and sharp. I saw the documents. You did the right thing flagging the disbursement. What's happening at your house? My wife is here, I said. Avery's posture stiffened. Gina paused. Put her on speaker? I didn't. Not yet. She's telling me why she's panicking. Gina's voice hardened. Don't do this alone. If she admits to financial irregularities, you need to stop the conversation and document it properly. Avery leaned forward, listening, eyes narrowed. I said, I hear you. Gina continued. Also, the bank called me. There's attempted asset movement. It's sloppy. If she tries to transfer collateral or move equipment out of the pledged entity, it's going to trigger more than a review. Avery's face drained. I ended the call and set the phone down. Avery stared at it like it was a weapon. You called your lawyer, she said. I called my sanity, I replied. Avery stood again, suddenly furious. So this is it? You're going to burn it down because your feelings got hurt on a stage? You use the stage, I said. You use the crowd. You use the cameras. You don't get to call it feelings when consequences show up. Avery stepped closer, voice hissing now. If the bank digs into Rusk, it's not just me. Who else? I asked. She hesitated. Then her phone buzzed again. Same contact, same rhythm. She answered, voice strained. What? Dylan Rusk's voice came through loud enough for me to catch it. Avery, listen. This is getting messy. You told me the final wire was guaranteed. Avery squeezed her eyes shut. It was. It's not now, Rusk said. And I'm not the one who's going to look foolish. Avery's gaze snapped to me. Rusk continued. Where are you? Avery didn't answer. Rusk's voice turned colder. If this clinic stalls, I need my position protected. You understand me? Avery's hand trembled around the phone. I stepped closer and said quietly, Put it on speaker. Avery didn't. I said, Put it on speaker, or I end this conversation and everything goes through counsel. Her nostrils flared. For a second, she looked like she might throw the phone at the wall. Instead, she tapped speaker. Rusk's voice filled my living room. Avery? I kept my voice calm. This is Mason. A beat. Then Rusk laughed once, like it amused him to find me alive in the story. Oh, he said. The early phase guy. Avery flinched. Rusk continued. You're making a mistake. This clinic is bigger than you two. I stared at Avery and said to Rusk, You're calling my house. That tells me it isn't bigger than me. Rusk's laugh faded. You think you can just pull funding and walk away clean? I can walk away documented, I said. And if you keep calling my home, I can add harassment to the file. Rusk's voice sharpened. Careful. You don't want attention. I felt something in my chest go very still. Attention is already here, I said. You just spoke on speakerphone in my living room. That was your choice. Rusk paused. Then slow, he said, Avery, get out of there. Avery's face tightened. Rusk continued, We'll handle him through the clinic, through the narrative. The word narrative hit me like a slap, because it told me something crucial. He wasn't worried about legality first. He was worried about story control. I said, Don't come near my home. Don't contact me again. Any communication goes to counsel. Rusk's voice was silk over steel. You're not as smart as you think. I replied, I'm smart enough to stop talking now. And I hung up. Avery stared at me, breathing hard. Now you've done it, she whispered. I didn't blink. No, you did. Avery paced again, faster, like movement could outrun consequences. You don't get it, she said. Dylan isn't a normal vendor guy. He has ties. People. Everyone has people, I said. So do I. Avery laughed bitterly. Your people are spreadsheets. My people are contracts, I corrected. And contracts beat threats in court. Avery stopped and pointed at me. You want to punish me? Fine. But if this goes sideways, they'll come for the clinic, for staff, for patients. I held her gaze. Then you should have built it clean. Avery's mouth twisted. Easy for you to say. I took a slow breath. Here's what's going to happen. She stared, stunned by the fact that I was speaking like a man who had already decided. You're leaving my house, I said. Now. Avery's eyes flashed. You don't get to. You're leaving, I repeated, calm. And tomorrow you communicate through counsel. You don't send your mother, you don't send staff, you don't send Rusk, you don't post, you don't hint, you don't threaten. Avery looked like she wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed again. Another call, another reminder that her leash wasn't imaginary. I added, if you try to move equipment, move money, or refile the entity without notifying the bank and my counsel, it gets worse. Avery's voice cracked with anger. You're acting like you own me. I'm acting like I own my exposure, I said. Because I do. She stared at me for a long second. Then she smiled. Not the stage smile. A colder one. You always wanted to be the good guy, she said quietly. This will ruin that for you. I didn't react. I'm not aiming for good. I'm aiming for protected. Avery grabbed her purse and moved toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. I didn't marry you because you were strong, she said. I married you because you were stable. The old version of me would have swallowed that. This version didn't. I said, and you're about to learn the difference between stable and weak. Avery's eyes narrowed. Then she left. I locked the door behind her, and the quiet that followed felt like the first honest thing in months. I opened my notebook again and wrote, Rusk, call log, speaker, threat tone. Then I wrote, Avery admits off-book fees, no recording. Then I wrote the one that mattered most, get witness, get paper trail. My phone buzzed again. Gina, call me, now. I did. Gina answered like she'd been holding her breath. Tell me everything, in order. I did, every word, every name, every phrase. When I finished, Gina said, Okay, here's the plan, and you need to follow it exactly. I'm listening. We're going to do 3 things at once, she said. 1. Formal notice to Avery's holding company that disbursement is suspended under the contract terms. 2. Protective letter to the bank documenting attempted asset movement and the call from Rusk. 3. We request a temporary order preventing transfer of pledged assets until the dispute is resolved. I swallowed. Can we do that fast? We can do it fast enough to make her regret improvising, Gina said. But you have to do your part. What's my part? Do not meet her alone again, Gina said. If she wants to talk, it's in my office or with a neutral third party present. And no matter what she says, no apologies, no tears, you don't agree verbally to anything. I stared at the locked door. Understood. Gina paused. Also, you said she called you a test-run husband in front of donors and press? Yes. Gina's tone turned dry. That wasn't just cruel. That was stupid. I didn't laugh. Why? Because the clinic relies on trust, she said. Medical businesses rise or collapse on reputation, stand or fall on it. If donors sense instability, they pull back. If vendors sense chaos, they tighten terms. If staff see a founder who humiliates her spouse publicly, they start updating resumes. I said nothing. Gina added, and one more thing. What? If Rusk is as connected as she claims, Gina said, then you need to assume he'll try to get ahead of this. By doing what? By making you look like the villain, she said, or by pushing Avery to paint you as abusive, unstable, controlling, anything that shifts the lens. My skin tightened. Gina continued, so starting now, you're clean, you're calm, you're documented, you're boring. Boring, I repeated. Yes, she said. Boring is unbeatable. I hung up and sat there in the quiet, letting that settle. Boring. Calm. Documented. That's how you win without throwing a punch. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. You just made a lot of people very interested in you. No signature, no name, just a threat wrapped in a sentence. I didn't answer. I forwarded it to Gina. Then I walked into my office, opened the safe, and took out the one thing Avery never paid attention to because it wasn't shiny. A folder labeled Personal Guarantee, Hartley Holdco. I stared at it, and for the first time that night I smiled. Not because I wanted to hurt her, because I realized she had built her whole clinic on the assumption that I would always choose peace over justice, and she was about to find out what happens when the quiet man finally chooses terms. The next morning, Avery didn't call. She posted a glossy photo from the opening, her holding the scissors, donors clapping, champagne flutes raised. Caption: New chapter, new beginnings. Grateful for everyone who believes in independent healthcare. Then, 20 minutes later, another post. A quote image. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the healthiest. She didn't tag me. She didn't need to. Her friends did it for her in the comments, like a choir. So proud of you. Freedom looks good on you. Some people hold you back. I watched it like a man watching smoke spread under a door. Then I got a call from a number I recognized. Avery's mother. I let it go to voicemail. She left one anyway. Mason, honey, please call me back. This is getting out of hand. Avery is under so much stress. You know how fragile she can be when she's overwhelmed. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. That was always code for, let her win. I didn't call back. At 11:07 a.m., Gina forwarded me a draft letter she'd sent to the bank and to Avery's holding company. It was brutal in the only way that matters. Calm and specific. At 11:19 a.m., the bank replied. They were freezing disbursement and escalating the review. At 11:41 a.m., my doorbell camera recorded a car I didn't recognize slowing in front of my house and rolling past. At 11:58 a.m., another text from the unknown number. You're not the only one with paperwork. I forwarded it again. Then I did the thing I'd avoided for years. I called my older brother, Caleb. Caleb picked up with the kind of voice that says he's been waiting for this call since the day Avery first met him and decided she was smarter. What's going on? He said. I need you to come over, I replied. Today. A pause. Are you safe? Yes, I said. But I'm not playing solo anymore. 2 hours later, Caleb sat at my kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, reading the contracts like he was reading a map out of a burning city. Caleb wasn't a lawyer. He was a construction project manager, the kind of man who could look at a timeline and smell a lie. He tapped the page. She's exposed, he said. Explain. This clause, he said. If the bank flags irregularities, the disbursement pauses. That triggers vendor delays. Vendor delays trigger penalties. Penalties trigger default risk with the landlord. I swallowed. So her whole opening was a staged victory. Caleb nodded. And she did it anyway. Why? Caleb looked up, eyes flat. Because she wanted the crowd to crown her. He leaned back and sighed. So, what's your goal? I stared at the folder. My goal, I said, is to end this without getting dragged into her chaos. Caleb snorted. Then you better control the narrative. I almost laughed at the word. Caleb continued. Not with posts, with receipts. I nodded slowly. I have receipts. Good, he said, because people like her only respect one thing. What? The moment they realize they can't bluff you, Caleb said, and the moment everyone else realizes it too. At 3:16 p.m., Gina texted, Avery requested an emergency meeting. She's bringing counsel. My office, 5 p.m. You're coming. Caleb can come too. I stared at the message. Caleb looked up. That fast? She's scared, I said. Caleb nodded. Good. At 4:40, my phone buzzed again. Avery. I didn't answer. A text followed. Please don't humiliate me. I read it twice. Then I typed, You already did that. I'm just ending the business exposure. I didn't send anything else. At 5 p.m., Gina's office smelled like coffee and paper and quiet power. Avery arrived in a black coat, hair perfect again, face carefully neutral, like she'd put the stage smile back on and stapled it to her cheeks. Beside her walked a man with silver hair and expensive shoes, her attorney, Grant Hollis. Avery sat without looking at me. Grant opened a folder and smiled at Gina like this was just another Tuesday. "Let's be efficient," Grant said. "My client wants an amicable separation and a smooth transition." Gina's voice stayed polite. "Amicable doesn't mean one-sided." Grant smiled wider. "Of course not." Avery finally looked at me, eyes glossy. "Mason," Gina cut in gently. "Speak through counsel." Avery's jaw tightened. Grant cleared his throat. "We're prepared to offer Mr. Hartley a fair settlement," Grant said, "in exchange for his cooperation in stabilizing clinic operations." Gina tilted her head. "Define cooperation." Grant slid a page across the table. "A statement," he said, "public, calm, that the funding shift is a private marital dispute and not related to clinic integrity." Caleb's chair creaked as he leaned forward. I felt my pulse slow, not speed up, because now I understood the play. They weren't asking for money first. They were asking for cover. Gina looked at the page, then at Grant. "That statement would be misleading." Grant shrugged. "It would be reassuring." Avery's eyes begged me, quietly, privately, while her posture stayed proud. Grant continued, "In return, my client will agree to a clean divorce process with favorable terms for Mr. Hartley." Caleb gave a short laugh. Not loud. Just enough. Grant's eyes snapped to him. "And you are?" Caleb smiled without warmth. "Family." Grant turned back to Gina. "Mr. Hartley's investment created reliance. If he destabilizes the clinic, there are potential claims." Gina didn't blink. "If your client attempted to move pledged assets during a financing review, there are potential consequences as well." Avery's throat moved as she swallowed. Grant smiled again. "We can argue hypotheticals all day, or we can sign something and move forward." I finally spoke. "No," I said. Avery's eyes widened. Grant's smile tightened. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated, calm. "I'm not signing a public statement. I'm not stabilizing anything. And I'm not agreeing to terms designed to protect whatever you're hiding." Avery flinched. Grant's tone cooled. "Be careful with accusations." Gina's voice turned sharper. "He didn't accuse. He declined." Grant leaned back, studying me. "If you don't cooperate, you'll be painted as vindictive, petty, a man sabotaging healthcare because his marriage ended." I looked at Avery. "You already started that story," I said. "At your opening." Avery's eyes glistened. Grant slid another sheet forward. "Then let's discuss settlement numbers." Gina glanced at it, then looked up slowly. "This is not a settlement. This is a bribe wrapped in paperwork." Grant's jaw tightened. "Watch yourself." Gina smiled. "I'm watching everything." The room went quiet. Then Avery finally spoke, voice trembling but controlled. "Please," she said, looking at me now, not Gina. "If this collapses, I lose everything." I held her gaze. "And what?" I asked quietly. "Did you think would happen to me when you handed me papers on a stage?" Avery's breath hitched. I leaned forward and said the sentence that made her face change. "I'm not here to ruin you," I said. "I'm here to stop covering you." Grant moved to speak, but Gina lifted a hand. "We'll respond through writing," Gina said. "This meeting is over." Grant stood, irritated. Avery stayed seated a second longer, like she was trying to memorize a version of me she hadn't believed existed. As we left, Caleb leaned close to my ear and whispered, "She's not scared of you. She's scared of what you'll show." And right as we reached the hallway, Gina's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her expression hardened. "What?" I asked. Gina showed me the message. It was from the bank. "We received an anonymous tip regarding irregular payments tied to the clinic build. We are escalating to a formal investigative review." I stared at the screen. Avery had said she couldn't have an audit. Now it wasn't just an audit. It was a spotlight. And somebody, maybe Rusk, maybe someone else, had decided the best way to survive was to shove Avery under it. Gina looked at me and said, "They're going to come for your involvement next. You need to be ready." I nodded slowly, because the truth was simple. I'd pulled the money, but now I had to pull something else out of the dark before they tried to drag me into it. The bank didn't call Avery first. They called me. It came in at 8:12 a.m., the kind of early call that tells you someone didn't sleep and decided you shouldn't either. "Mr. Hartley," the woman said, voice calm, professional. "This is Elaine Porter from Latham Bridge Bank's Risk Division. We need to ask you a few questions regarding your involvement with Hartley Wellness." I sat at my kitchen table, coffee untouched. "I'm available." "Good," she said. "This call is recorded. Are you aware of any irregular payments associated with the clinic's build?" "No," I said. "I became aware of concerns last night." Elaine paused. "From whom?" "From Dr. Hartley," I replied, "during an unsolicited visit to my residence." Another pause, longer this time. And what exactly did she disclose? I chose my words like I was stepping across ice. "She acknowledged off-book fees paid to expedite equipment and vendor timelines," I said. "She identified a third party named Dylan Rusk as the facilitator." Silence. Then the sound of typing. "Did you approve those payments?" Elaine asked. "No," I said. "I was not informed. They were not documented in the budget I reviewed." "And when did you act to suspend funding?" she asked. "Immediately after the public divorce filing and before any additional funds were dispersed," I said. "Through counsel." Elaine exhaled softly. "Thank you for your clarity." I waited. She continued, "Mr. Hartley, for your awareness, the anonymous tip we received included partial wire references and vendor names." My stomach tightened. "So this isn't speculative?" "No," she said. "It's directional." "Am I a target?" I asked. Elaine didn't hesitate. "At this time, you are a witness, but that depends on how transparent this remains." I nodded, though she couldn't see it. "You'll have everything you request." "I believe that," she said. "One more question." "Go ahead." "Why do you think Dr. Hartley served divorce papers publicly?" The question surprised me. I answered honestly. "To separate me from the business before scrutiny arrived." Elaine didn't comment. Then she said, "We will be requesting documents from your counsel. Please do not coordinate narratives with any involved parties." "I won't," I said. "Good," she replied. "Because coordination is usually what turns witnesses into something else." The line went silent. I sat there a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ordinary sounds of a house that hadn't noticed its owner's life was being relabeled in someone else's system. Then my phone buzzed. Avery. I didn't answer. Then a message from Gina. "Bank confirmed review escalation. This is now bigger than her panic. Stay boring. Stay documented." I typed back, "Understood." Then I got dressed and went to work. Dylan Rusk didn't wait long. He showed up where I didn't expect him to. At 12:34 p.m., my assistant buzzed my office. "There's a man here to see you," she said carefully. "He didn't give a name, but he's confident." I closed my laptop. "Send him in." Rusk walked into my office like he owned the floor beneath his shoes, mid-40s, expensive jacket, smile calibrated to intimidate men who confuse volume with authority. "Mason," he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. "Dylan," I replied, seating myself. "You shouldn't be here." He chuckled. "Relax. I'm not here to threaten you." I looked at him. "You already did that by text." His smile thinned. "That was a misunderstanding." "Then clear it up," I said. Rusk sat without being invited. "You pulled money that didn't just belong to Avery. It belonged to Momentum." "Momentum doesn't have a legal identity," I said. "Entities do." Rusk leaned forward. "You think the bank review protects you? It doesn't. It freezes everyone." "I'm aware," I said. "And you think Avery is the problem," he continued. She's not. I raised an eyebrow. Then who is? He smiled. People who don't understand how things actually get built. I tapped the folder on my desk. Things get built with documented funds and licensed vendors. Rusk laughed softly. That's the brochure version. Then here's the courtroom version, I said. You contacted my home. You pressured my wife during a financing event. You discussed guarantees you didn't control. Rusk's eyes flicked to the folder. You recording me? He asked. No, I said. But the bank is. That landed. Rusk leaned back, reassessing. You're calmer than Avery described, he said. I'm not emotional, I replied. I'm done. Rusk stood. Here's what's going to happen, he said. The clinic will survive. Avery will claim ignorance, and you'll be painted as the husband who panicked. I met his gaze. And here's what's actually going to happen. I won't say anything. You'll say too much, and the paperwork will speak for me. Rusk studied me for a long second. Then he smiled again, different now, less confident. You should have stayed quiet, he said. I replied, I did, for years. He left without another word. At 1:02 p.m., Gina emailed me. We need to meet. They're moving witnesses. Avery was working the phones. I didn't know that because she told me. I knew because 3 people called me within an hour. First was Lena Morris, her former office manager. I don't want to get involved, Lena said, voice shaking. But Dr. Hartley asked me to confirm invoices I never approved. I said nothing. Let silence do the work. She said it was just to clean things up, Lena added. I said I needed to think. Thank you for telling me, I said. Please talk to your own counsel. Then came Evan Brooks, a vendor rep. She asked me to reissue dates, he said quietly. Backdate them. I refused. Then the third call, from someone I didn't expect. Owen Pike, the operations director. I can't cover this, he said. She's spiraling. Rusk is pressuring her. Staff are asking questions, and she wants me to sign something I didn't review. I closed my eyes. Owen, I said, you need to protect yourself. I know, he replied. That's why I'm calling you. After I hung up, I sat back and exhaled. This was the moment where things either collapsed inward or exploded outward. Gina called 10 minutes later. They're trying to lock down a story, she said. They want Avery to look like the victim of a controlling spouse. I felt my jaw tighten. Let me guess. Unstable, financial abuse, emotional pressure. Yes, Gina said. Classic. What do? We don't counter with noise, she replied. We counter with sequence. Explain. Gina's voice sharpened. We document the order of events, her public action, your immediate legal response, the bank's independent escalation, Rusk's contact, her attempt to move assets. I nodded slowly. Timeline. Exactly, Gina said. Truth with timestamps. And if she goes public first? Gina paused. Then we let her. I frowned. That's it? That's everything, Gina said. People who lie rush. People who tell the truth wait. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time since the stage, I felt something close to control. Avery didn't wait. At 6:48 p.m., my phone lit up with a link. Local news. Exclusive. Doctor claims estranged husband sabotaged clinic. I clicked. Avery sat in a studio chair, eyes glossy, voice soft. I trusted him, she said. I supported him for years, and when I finally stepped into my independence, he reacted by pulling critical funding. The anchor nodded sympathetically. It's heartbreaking, Avery continued. Patients, staff, all caught in the crossfire. I didn't flinch. I watched the whole thing. Because halfway through, she made the mistake Gina had predicted. He was always controlling with finances, Avery said. I didn't realize how much until it was too late. There it was. I forwarded the clip to Gina. Her reply came fast. Good. She went first. What now? I texted. Gina replied, now we release the timeline, and we let the documents talk. At 9:03 p.m., Gina's firm published a single-page statement. No emotion, no accusations, just dates. Public divorce service at clinic opening. Immediate suspension of undisbursed funds per contract. Bank-initiated review following independent tip. Third-party contact from Dylan Rusk. Attempted asset movement during review. Attached, redacted contracts. Bank acknowledgement, call logs, no commentary, no insults, just facts. I shut my laptop and sat in the dark. At 9:27 p.m., my phone buzzed. Avery. I didn't answer. Then a text. You're destroying me. I stared at it. Then typed, no, I stopped protecting you. I put the phone face down. Outside, a car passed. Inside, everything was quiet. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. This wasn't revenge. It was gravity. By Wednesday morning, the bank review had teeth. Not the dramatic kind Avery expected, no flashing lights, no angry calls, but the quiet kind that makes adults sit straighter. Latham Bridge sent formal requests to the clinic, the vendors, and the landlord. Each request had a deadline. Each deadline had consequences. Elaine Porter called again. We've identified discrepancies, she said, not criminal conclusions, patterns. Patterns of what? I asked. Urgency without documentation, she replied, and intermediaries who don't like sunlight. I thought of Rusk's smile. He won't. No, Elaine agreed. He's already repositioning. Against Avery? Toward survival, she said. People like that don't fall on swords. They change stories. After the call, Gina sent me a memo titled Sequence and Exposure. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. The timeline spoke louder than adjectives. At noon, Owen Pike resigned. He didn't tell Avery first. He told counsel. His letter was careful, neutral, devastating. He cited pressure to sign documents he hadn't reviewed, requests to reissue dates, and direct contact from a third party promising coverage. The landlord followed an hour later, notice of default if funding didn't resume under bank clearance. Staff started whispering. Whispering becomes emailing. Emailing becomes forwarding. At 3:04 p.m., Avery called me from a blocked number. I didn't answer. At 3:11 p.m., she emailed Gina asking for a private meeting to de-escalate. Gina replied with one line, all communications in writing. At 4:40 p.m., a local reporter emailed me directly. I forwarded it to Gina without replying. At 6:00 p.m., Avery posted again. This time, no quotes. Just a photo of her in scrubs, captioned, "Still here, still fighting." The comments were quieter now. Rusk called Gina's office, not mine. He wanted to clarify. Clarify is a word men use when their leverage slips. Gina looped me in on speaker. "Mason," Rusk said, voice suddenly friendly. "This thing's gotten bigger than it needed to be." "It grew when you tried to rush it," I replied. Rusk laughed softly. "Let's not pretend we're saints. Avery made choices, so did I." Gina cut in. "We're not here for confessions. What do you want?" Rusk hesitated. "Distance." "From what?" Gina asked. "From her decisions," he said. "I was a connector, not an operator." I said nothing. Rusk continued. "I can provide records, introductions, payment pathways." Gina's voice sharpened. "In exchange for what?" "Written confirmation that Mr. Hartley had no knowledge of expedited fees," Rusk said, "and that I acted independently." I leaned forward. "You did act independently." Rusk exhaled. "Then we're aligned." Gina ended the call without promising anything. She looked at me. "He's cutting her loose." "When?" I asked. "Already," she said. "He's shopping his cooperation." I nodded. "Let him." Avery finally did the one thing everyone warned her not to do. She emailed staff, not counsel, not the bank. Staff. She framed it as leadership. She asked for loyalty. She suggested the review was external pressure fueled by personal conflict. Then she attached a draft memo and asked a senior nurse to clean it up. The nurse forwarded it to HR. HR forwarded it to counsel. Counsel forwarded it to the bank. By nightfall, Elaine called again. "Your wife is interfering," she said. "That changes posture." "To what?" I asked. "Containment," she replied. "We're advising the clinic to pause operations until clarity improves." Pause operations. Avery's clinic, her crown, went dark for 48 hours. It wasn't a shutdown. It was worse. It was doubt. Gina scheduled a conference room at a neutral firm, glass walls, neutral coffee, a long table designed to keep people honest. Avery arrived late. She looked smaller without a stage. Grant Hollis was gone, replaced by a younger attorney who kept checking his phone. Owen wasn't there. Rusk wasn't there. Gina began. "We're here to document, not negotiate." Avery's voice shook. "I just want this to stop." "It stops when the truth finishes," Gina said. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, the timeline, the contracts, the bank acknowledgments, the call log, the resignation letter. Avery flipped pages faster and faster. "This is unfair," she whispered. "It's accurate," I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. "You promised to support me." "I promised to fund a business," I replied. "Not a shortcut." She pressed her palms to the table. "If I lose my license—" "No one is taking your license," Gina said calmly, "unless you keep obstructing." Avery slumped back. Her attorney spoke for the first time. "What do you want?" I answered without hesitation. My name cleared, my exposure closed, and the return of my capital per the terms. Avery laughed weakly. "There's no money." Gina slid another document forward. "There is. Personal guarantee." Avery froze. She stared at the page like it had just learned her name. "You never thought I'd read it," I said quietly. "You never thought I'd need it." Tears welled, then anger. "You're enjoying this," she said. I shook my head. "I'm ending it." Rusk's records landed the next morning, vendor emails, payment requests, introductions with phrases like handled and covered and don't loop finance. Elaine confirmed receipt. At noon, the bank issued its interim conclusion. No evidence of investor coordination, findings isolated to operational decisions. My phone buzzed. "Avery, one message. I didn't think you'd choose this." I typed back one line. "I chose the truth when you chose the stage." I put the phone down. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, the story was finally correcting itself. The reversal didn't start with a headline. It started with silence. The clinic's social pages stopped posting. The quotes disappeared. The comments section went from encouragement to questions. Questions turned into screenshots. Screenshots turned into emails. At 9:22 a.m., the local station updated their original piece. Update. Bank review confirms funding pause followed public divorce filing. Investor cooperation documented. No spin, no drama, just sequence. By 10 hours, a second outlet ran a quieter piece. No photos, just text. Clinic operations paused pending internal review. At 10:17, Avery's original interview was clipped and reposted by a health policy blogger with one line of commentary. "When timelines matter, dates matter more." I watched it happen from my office, blinds open, phone face down. Gina called at 10:31. "It's turning." "Define turning," I said. "Her narrative can't survive the timestamps," she replied. "And Rusk just finalized his cooperation." I closed my eyes for a second. Not relief. Focus. "What does he give?" I asked. "Enough," Gina said, "and he's careful to give it without theatrics." At 11:05, the bank released a short memo to stakeholders, not public-facing, not confidential either. Findings indicate investor acted within contractual rights. Operational irregularities under review. That sentence did more damage than any accusation could have. At noon, the mayor's office quietly canceled a planned ribbon photo repost. At 12:18, the landlord sent notice, not default, but a demand for assurance before resuming access. Avery's phone started lighting up. Mine didn't. The unwind meeting happened at 2 p.m. No cameras, no crowd, just a conference room, a spreadsheet on a screen, and 3 people who knew the truth had already decided. Gina spoke first. Capital return will follow the contract. Disbursements frozen, escrow reconciled, guarantee executed. Avery stared at the spreadsheet like it was a foreign language. That number isn't real, she said. It's documented, Gina replied, and it's yours to cover. Avery's attorney rubbed his temples. We'll need time. You have time, Gina said. You don't have leverage. Avery turned to me. You don't need all of it, she said. Be reasonable. I met her eyes. I am being reasonable. I'm taking exactly what the agreement says. She scoffed. You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm closing my exposure. The attorney cleared his throat. If we proceed, Dr. Hartley will need to liquidate personal assets. Gina nodded. That's how guarantees work. Avery's jaw tightened. You always said you believed in me. I believed in transparency, I replied. I believed in process. She laughed once, bitter. You never believed in me. I leaned forward. I believed you when you said you wanted independence. I just didn't know you meant without accountability. The room went quiet. At 2:47 p.m., the terms were agreed in principle. At 3:02, Avery asked for a break. She stepped into the hallway and pressed her hands to the wall like the building might move. I stayed seated. Avery came back in alone. No attorney, no phone. She closed the door and looked at me like she finally understood the rules. I need you to say something, she said. I didn't respond. To the press, she continued. To the donors, something neutral. Why? I asked. Because if you don't, she said, voice cracking, this follows me forever. I chose my words carefully. This follows choices. She shook her head. You're better than this. I stood. I am exactly this. Avery's eyes searched my face for the man she married, the quiet one who smoothed edges and absorbed blame. He wasn't there. You could have protected me, she said. I replied, you tried to use me as protection without consent. She laughed weakly. So that's it. That's it, I said. I won't add to the story. I won't subtract from it. She wiped her eyes, straightened her blazer, and nodded. Then we're done. Yes, I said. We are. The final document posted at 6:12 p.m. Not by me, by the bank. A neutral summary confirming cooperation, isolating findings, and noting that investor funds were returned per agreement. No names highlighted, no villains crowned. But the effect was immediate. By nightfall, the comments under Avery's old posts were locked. By morning, her independent healthcare tagline quietly vanished from the clinic site. Staff updated their profiles. Donors stopped tagging. The story didn't explode. It corrected. Gina texted at 9:04 p.m. You're clear. Capital secured. Exposure closed. I replied, thank you. Then I sat alone in my living room, the house finally quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. I thought about the stage, the scissors, the smile, and I understood the difference between winning loudly and winning clean. One leaves noise, the other leaves proof. The final document didn't arrive by courier. It came by email at 7:41 a.m. on a Friday. Subject line, confirmation of release and settlement execution. No drama, no flourish. I read it slowly, twice. The bank confirmed the return of capital. The guarantee was executed and closed. My name was formally released from all present and future exposure tied to the clinic. No further action required. At the bottom, timestamps, signatures, reference numbers. That was it. No victory lap, no apology attached. Just closure. I forwarded it to Gina. She replied with one line, "You're done." Cleanly. I set the phone down and stood by the window, watching a garbage truck crawl down the street like it had all the time in the world. For the first time since the opening night, I did too. Avery showed up that afternoon. No warning, no call. She didn't knock hard this time, just 2 light taps. I opened the door and saw her standing there without the blazer, without the armor. Jeans, flats, no makeup. She looked ordinary. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside but didn't invite her in. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she belonged anywhere anymore. "I read the bank summary," she said. "You're cleared." "Yes," I replied. She nodded. "They're letting me keep my license." "I know." Another nod. Silence stretched. "They're forcing a restructure," she said. "New board oversight, no intermediaries." "That's reasonable." She let out a humorless laugh. "You always say that. Reasonable." I waited. Finally, she looked at me, really looked. "You planned this," she said. I shook my head. "I prepared for it." "That's the same thing," she snapped. "No," I said calmly. "Planning is manipulation. Preparation is self-respect." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "You humiliated me," she said quietly. I didn't flinch. "You humiliated me first, I just didn't clap." She swallowed. "I didn't think you'd fight." "I didn't," I said. "I documented." That landed harder than any insult. She looked past me into the house, the one she'd stripped of evidence piece by piece. "I thought you were safe," she said. "I am," I replied. She nodded slowly, like she finally understood the difference. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a single envelope. "I brought this," she said, "just in case." I didn't take it. "What is it?" I asked. "A signed statement," she said, admitting the opening was my decision, that the funding pause wasn't retaliation. I studied her face. No tricks left. Just fatigue. "I don't need it," I said. Her brow furrowed. "Why not?" "Because the record already exists," I replied, "and I'm not rewriting history anymore." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something in her had finally let go. "I really thought I won," she said. I answered honestly. "You thought winning was the same as being applauded." She nodded once. Then she turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door gently behind her. That night, I opened the safe one last time, not to take something out, to put something in. I placed the final settlement confirmation inside, shut the door, and spun the lock. Then I moved the safe. Not because I was afraid, because I didn't need to look at it anymore. I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd taken the first call from the bank. Same chair, same light, different man. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. "Guess you got out clean." I stared at it for a long second. Then I blocked the number. No reply. No last word. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars passed. Lights changed. Life went on without commentary. That's when it hit me. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even personal at the end. It was simply the moment everyone stopped lying on my behalf. I turned off the light. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without rehearsing conversations that would never happen. The story didn't end with applause. It ended with silence. And silence, finally, was mine. 3 days after everything was signed, one last email arrived. Not from Avery, not from the bank, not from any attorney from the clinic. Short, administrative, emotionless. "Please confirm that you have no remaining financial or operational ties to Hartley Wellness." I opened the attachment. A list. My name, crossed out. My signature, archived. My stake, closed. I replied with one sentence. "Confirmed. Wishing you a stable transition." Then I sent it. That wasn't kindness. That was punctuation. That evening, I left the house without my phone. Just walked. No destination, no strategy. The city didn't care. Cars passed. Store lights flickered. People laughed at outdoor tables. That's how I knew it was over. I stopped in front of a storefront window where a muted TV played the local news. No sound. A headline scrolled at the bottom. Clinic restructures leadership after financial review. No names, no drama, no mention of me. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not victory. Relief. Because the final revenge wasn't exposure. It wasn't humiliation. It wasn't watching her fall. It was walking away with my name intact and realizing I no longer needed hers attached to it. I turned away from the window and kept walking. Nothing followed me. A week later, a courier dropped off a thin envelope. No return address, no logo, no explanation. Just my name, written carefully, like someone didn't want to make a mistake. Inside was a single page. Property records. Avery had refinanced her condo. Not to renovate. Not to invest. Not to grow. To cover the guarantee. I stood there longer than I needed to, reading the numbers twice, then once more. Not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to understand what they represented. They weren't punishment. They weren't revenge. They were math catching up. I folded the paper once, then again, slow, deliberate. I didn't frame it, didn't photograph it, didn't send it to anyone. I slid it into an old drawer at the back of my desk, the kind of drawer you forget about until years later, not as a trophy, not as leverage, as proof. Proof that consequences don't need an audience. Proof that silence can still close accounts. That evening, I stood on my porch and watched the streetlights turn on one by one down the block, like a sequence that had nothing to do with me. Cars passed. A couple argued quietly on the sidewalk, then laughed. Somewhere a door slammed, then reopened. Normal life. My phone stayed inside. I didn't miss it. There were no calls asking for help, no messages asking for mercy, no last attempts to explain what should have been explained earlier. Nothing to manage, nothing to fix. The world hadn't rewarded me. It hadn't apologized either. It had simply stopped billing me for someone else's choices. I went back inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights. No echo, no aftermath. Just quiet that didn't feel empty anymore.